Hello, in this video we are going to talk about how to take inputs in Python 3. And we are going to take inputs for strings, integers, and floats. So we're going to start with strings. And the way we take inputs for all these cases is we use the built-in input function. And the input function works like this. It's called input, and it takes a string, and then it returns what the user types. So if I want to take, for example, a name, I'm going to say name equals, and so this is, now I'm going to use the input function. I'll say input, and then inside, as a parameter, I'll pass to the input function a string, what is your name? And I might print something like hello name. So how this works is when I run this program, it's going to see line 7, and it's going to, this is an assignment statement, so we always evaluate the right hand side first. We are running the input function, so what that does is it causes the program to stop, prompt the user with this string, and wait until the user presses enter. So if I come over here and I say Python 3, and I'm going to say taking inputs, it says, what is your name? And now it waits. And it waits for me to type something in. So I could put in Paul. And it says, hello, Paul. I could run this again. It says, what is your name? And I could say 416. It says, hello, 416. But what's really important here is that no matter what I type in, it is interpreted as a string. So when it stores Paul as a string. When it takes 416, it stores 416 as a string. Which presents some other problems if we want to start doing number type things to it. So let's come down and let's look at how we take for input integers. So let's say, for example, I wanted to find the area of a rectangle, and we're going to say that the rectangle has integer side lengths. So I might do something like this. Side 1 equals input. What is side 1? Right? I'm going to say side 2 equals input. What is side 2? And I'm going to say area equals side 1 times side 2. And I might print something like the area of the rectangle is... Okay. Now there's going to be a number of problems here. And let's just run this and let's see if we can identify what those are. So we're going to run it. What is my name? Paul. And then it says, what is side 1, which is line 11. And I'm going to say 4. What is side 2? I'm going to press 3. And then as soon as I hit enter, it crashes. Now the reason why it's crashing here is because what's happening on line 14 is I am trying to multiply side 1 by side 2. And what I'm trying to do is treat it like a number. And I can't do that because all inputs in Python are taken and assumed to be strings. So what happens is when I put in side 1 of 4, it assumes 4 as a string. It assumes 3 as a string. So that's why I can't multiply them. So what I need to do is I'm going to put a line below here, and I'm going to say side 1 equals, and I'm going to cast side 1 to an int. And so what happens now is it says, what is side 1? I say that I take an input value, and it will take it as a string, and then I cast it to an int. Take string input. Make this a little bit larger. Beautiful. There we go. And so that's the process. When I take an input for an integer, I have to take the input, but then I have to cast it to an int type. And I can do this using 2 lines, or I can actually take this and I can do it in a condensed format that looks like this, where I kind of, I put it inside the casting function. So essentially I start from the inside and work my way out. I take the input, I put in a number, and then it takes that number and casts it to an int, and then it puts it inside too. So if I run this again here, my name is Paul. If I put 3, 4, notice I now can take those inputs, and where I've crashed is somewhere different. And I've crashed now on line 18. And the reason I've crashed on line 18 is because when I multiply these two sides together, I'm multiplying two integers, Python assumes integer result. So that means area is an integer. And again, in our last video, we mentioned we can't concatenate strings and integers. So I have to come down here and I have to do this. And now I've casted area to a string, which allows me to, if I save this, let's just clear this up. So now my name is Paul, and I'm going to say 3, 4, and I get the area of the rectangle is 12. I should probably spell this correctly. There we go. And because the math teacher in me, units squared. There we go. So let's try this again. Paul, 2, 7, and I get 14 units squared. Notice though, if I run this now, I put Paul, and I'm going to say 5.6, and it crashes. And the reason it crashes is because this line right here. I've taken my input, 5.6 as a string, and that's perfectly fine. And then I try and cast 5.6 to an integer, but I can't do that because 5.6 does not fit in an integer memory space. I hope you're starting to see why type matters here. So this works, but it only works in situations where I want to cast them where I take integer values. And you can play around with this. It might be interesting to see. What happens if you cast these to floats. But let's talk about taking inputs for floats. Maybe we want to take someone's height. So we're going to say height equals, and we're going to say input, and we're going to say what is your height? And again, the parameters, I'm designing this program such that the person can input heights that have decimal values. So in this case, I'm going to say height equals, I'm going to cast it to a float. And I'm going to print name your height is, and if I want to put the height variable in here, I have to cast it back to a string to use it in a sentence. So if I save this, let's clear this. Oh. Let's pause this. Okay, so now I can say Python 3, and I'm going to run taking inputs.py. Notice there's a nice little trick here. If I start to type in the word and I hit tab, if there's only one possibility, it will auto-complete it. What is my name? My name is Paul. I can do this rectangle. What is your height? 188.45. It says, Paul, your height is 188.45. So by casting this height to a float, I'm changing the type, and then if I want to use it on the output, I have to cast it back to a string. Again, playing around is really important to understand this. So let's cast this to an int and see what happens. So we're going to save this, and we're going to run this. My name is Paul, 5'6". So I'm going to put 188.45. And notice if I put 0.45 and I try and cast it to an int, it crashes. And this brings up a really interesting kind of area of programming that beginning programmers kind of get stuck in, is trying to get your computer not to crash or your program not to crash given wrong inputs is possible, but it actually takes a number of different techniques. And it comes down to understanding type and checking for type and telling the program to do something different if the wrong type is detected. With that, I hope this video has been helpful. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.